Let's give a round of applause for Eva and welcome her to the stage.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming out today. It's so inspiring to see so many people here. As they were saying, we have 19 cities around the country protesting today. So I am going to begin this speech on behalf of Refuse Fascism nationally. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. In the name of humanity, driving out a fascist regime is not a small matter. It will not be easy, but it is what we must do going forward from today. Every day we face the growing threat of nuclear war and the escalating devastation of the planet. Immigrants, Muslims, women, LGBTQ people, the elderly, the sick, the disabled, Black and Latino people are all in direct peril. We pledge today to unite, to stand up, to resist, and to act with conviction and courage, and not rest until this regime is driven from power. We make this pledge because what is at stake in confronting this fascist regime of Donald Trump and Mike Pence is nothing less than the future of humanity and the health and survival of life on Earth. Refuse Fascism recognizes and appreciates all of you here and across the country who have come out today. You are here because you refuse to sit by and look the other way when so many live in terror for fear of being locked up or deported. You are here because you see the danger that is the Trump and Pence regime. You will not be a person who says, when they came for the Muslims, I did nothing because I was not a Muslim. You will not be a person who says, when they came for the immigrants, I did nothing because I was not an immigrant. We stand up today because we must act while there is still time to stop a worldwide catastrophe. So I want to give a special shout out to those at Refuse Fascism in Houston who are protesting today. They have come out in defiance of the Orwellian-named fascist thugs, the Texas Freedom Force, who called on their rabid followers to counter-protest with guns and the Confederate flag of slavery. They are trying to intimidate people from standing up to demand that the Trump and Pence regime must go. We recognize, too, the Los Angeles Refuse Fascism protest that begins at the obscene Donald Trump Hollywood star, which a group of fascist fanatics has vowed to defend. Refuse Fascism has answered. What you are defending is nooses and nukes, a racist and fascist regime that threatens the planet. No, we will not be moved. Yeah. And a shout out right here to Refuse Fascism New York City, who for 100 hours, night and day, has been out in front of the Fox News headquarters saying no. Yeah. Since its inception by the sexual predator Roger Ailes, Fox has been the lying voice and the propaganda machine that has built up and cohered the many fascist dreams in this country. And today, it is the biggest mouthpiece for the Trump and Pence fascist regime. 100 hours in the heat, overnight, in the rain, in the sun, bringing out the reality of what this regime has done and plans to do. Refuse Fascism's stance, certitude, fortitude, and commitment foreshadow the kind of determined perseverance that more and more people need to take on. Ultimately, millions to put their lives on hold to reclaim not only our own future, but the future of humanity by driving out the Trump and Pence regime. Yeah. To everyone who is standing up today in defiance of this regime, you are in the right place. Today is the beginning of what must be a new stage of our struggle. There must be no illusions about what we face. We must discuss and debate deeply with one another to come to understand the tremendous necessity we face in confronting a regime in the most powerful country in the world that is hell-bent on consolidating fascism. It is an American fascism, manifest destiny and American exceptionalism, a fascism wrapped in the Bible taken literally, and the American flag saturated with racism, misogyny, and xenophobia. Going forward from today, we must shatter the illusion and all the self-delusions that what we face is just another in a long line of bad administrations, or that the checks and balances of this system will prevail and rescue us. That is not true. That would be turning away from the situation that we confront. The task before us is not just to strengthen our resistance, or merely to find the ways that our different struggles can come together. We must sound and then answer the alarm that what is at stake is whether or not there will even be the political, the legal, and the civic space for dissent and resistance. Already in state after state and at the federal level, they are moving to criminalize and eliminate dissent and protest. The rights and the dignity of the people have no place in the program or the coarsened heart of this regime. No, we must transform our resistance to become something far more serious, a struggle that can alter the course of history, driving out a regime that imperils us all. As we gather today, there is great anxiety and fear and trauma as group after group is demonized and targeted by this regime. Piece by piece, rights are being stripped away against one group and then another. All the while, we are surrounded by a dizzying blizzard of lies and buffoonery. All of this is setting in motion a slippery and ever-steepening slope that will lead to great horrors if this regime is not stopped. This is why we say, and we must say again and again, backing up our words with action, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. We say this because while fascism has many characteristics, racism, misogyny, and xenophobia to name only a few, at its core it is a form of rule that relies on open terror and open violence, trampling on what are supposed to be civil rights and legal rights. Fascism wields the power of the state, and it mobilizes organized groups of fanatical thugs to commit atrocities against masses of people, especially the groups of people they identify as enemies, undesirables, or dangerous to society. The question has been posed, could it happen here? The answer is yes, it is happening here. And it is our responsibility, every single one of us, to stop it before it chokes off the air in society. Make no mistake, while the media focuses people's attention on charges of collusion and Trump's narcissism, the regime has been very steadily moving ahead with their program on every front. When the media, including even liberal media like MSNBC, say things like, Trump is holding a campaign rally to boost his own morale, they are misleading you. They are obscuring the truth that these are fascist rallies. The reality is that Trump is consciously whipping up his social base. He is stoking their sense of aggrievement and revenge with calls to take back their country, trying to cleanse America of multiculturalism. He is fueling a bigoted white resentment and promoting a patriarchal, woman-hating political form of Christian fundamentalism. And these forces are moving, led from the top, claiming that they are the victims, claiming that their so-called right to free speech, really their right to threaten and beat up anyone who stands in their way, is under attack. Identifying the nature of the problem we face is the first step to finding its solution. To treat a disease requires an accurate diagnosis. Defeating this fascist regime requires first recognizing what it is, without sugarcoating or wishful thinking. Trump is a fascist, straight up. And Pence is one of the most reactionary political figures in modern U.S. history, in his complete devotion to bringing into being a theocratic Christian fascist government. But in the very extremeness of Donald Trump and of Mike Pence also resides the key to the way out. This regime has shocked the conscience of millions of people. People who never really gave that much thought to politics have been anguished and politically aroused as few times ever before. This is what we must tap into. We have to give people a way to express their outrage. We must lead people to act in unprecedented ways, to demand that this regime be removed from power. Nothing else will be sufficient to stop it. It is so important that the last few months have been marked by repeated protests. But this protest and resistance against the many attacks on the people must grow broader, deeper, and more determined. The resistance is righteous and it is necessary, but it is not yet sufficient. It is a matter of life and death to recognize that the character of fascism is that it can absorb separate acts of resistance, while continually throwing the opposition off balance by rapidly moving its agenda forward. The reality is that the Trump and Pence regime will repeatedly launch new and highly repressive measures, eventually clamping down on all resistance and remaking the law, if they are not driven out of power. You cannot wait out fascism. We must never normalize or accommodate to fascism. If you do, you will very soon find yourself conciliating and collaborating to save yourself or to help a few people escape the maelstrom. The hour is late and we must not speak falsely, even with the best of intentions. If you are only working within the terms set by this regime, if you are only advising and helping a few individuals as the attacks come down harder by the day, sooner and not later, you will be forced to become part of the machinery of real horrors. Now is the time for massive resistance. There is no neutral. This is the lesson of Nazi Germany and every other fascist state. It can become too late. But it is not yet too late. This must be a summer of struggle, leading into the fall, where more and more people begin to coalesce around the single unifying demand: the Trump and Pence regime must go. And in this moment, especially when the Trump and Pence regime faces scandal and turmoil, we need to seize this as an opening for the mass action of the people to burst through. We must make our demand resound throughout the country, in the halls of power and around the world. The Trump and Pence regime must go! We must act, we must agitate, and we must organize. Join us in building capacity and momentum working with all our creativity and determination toward the time when millions can be moved to flood the streets of cities and towns, day after day and night after night, refusing to leave and declaring this whole regime and its supporters illegitimate, demanding and not stopping until this regime is driven from power. If this happens, then the whole political landscape would be transformed dramatically. Every faction within the established power structure would be forced to respond, and all of this could lead to a situation in which this regime is driven from office. So what we are calling for is unprecedented. But at the same time, there are models and experience to learn from. Nixon and his vice president, Spiro Agnew, were both driven from power. And more recently, in South Korea, millions filled the streets night after night. At first, they started just on the weekends, and then they eventually drove their president out of power. In Ukraine, in Tahrir Square in Egypt, people in their millions protested day after day, night after night, creating a political crisis for those in power to remove despised leaders. There were shortcomings, for sure, and there are differences, but never underestimate the power of the people when we struggle righteously in the interest of humanity. We can do this. The people are there. The anger is there. Starting with those of us who stepped out right here today and around the country today. If we act creatively with determination, if we confront their regime and their representatives and their institutions and their fascist thug supporters, if we always do so in a way that brings the truth to their lives, if we make people feel that immigrants, Muslims, women, Black and Latino people, LGBTQ people, and people all over the world are full human beings, if we show in word and deed that we will not accept the cruel and brutal future of the Trump and Pence regime, then we can bring forward the people needed to drive them out. So we need to hit the road. We need to send out vans with people. We need to organize young people dedicated to making this a summer of struggle to drive out the fascist regime. Donate and raise funds. Become a volunteer. And as the summer progresses, first one night a week, and then on weekends, growing numbers of people should gather, showing through what they do that there must not be business as usual while this regime is in power. Before you leave today, sign up to be a part of all of this. You can be part of protests, you can distribute literature after work and on the weekends, be part of making resistance art, and so many other ways. So strategize with your groups, strategize with your friends, and with Refuse Fascism. If we organize, if we dare to confront those who are imposing terror, repression, and hardship on the people, if we have open arms to welcome and draw forward more people into this fight, this can combine with the growing attacks of the regime and the events in the world, with the potential to move millions to act. But if we don't organize, and if we don't start acting with the demand that the Trump and Pence regime must go, then the opportunity to drive them out and prevent its brutal future could be lost. It is true that there is much to figure out. That is always the case when fighting against great injustice. Not everything was figured out when the freedom rides against Jim Crow began in the South. Victory was hardly guaranteed, and there were tremendous sacrifices. But was it worth it? Yes. No question. Hell yes. The Trump and Pence regime must go. This is a righteous demand. This is a righteous demand. The fight to achieve it will be difficult, but it can be done. We will learn and we will chart our course as we move forward together. Join us in this. Make a commitment today with all of your heart. This must be a moment in history when we stand together with conviction and courage, overcoming fear and uncertainty, to resist and say no, not just for ourselves, but in the name of humanity. The Trump and Pence regime must go. I want to close by having everyone take a pledge with me. Everyone raise your fist in the air. And here's how it goes. No!
No!